2020 was what many would describe as the worst year, and as someone who's really felt the intangible effects of COVID-19 on our way of life, I find it hard to disagree. For personal reasons, the stress of bringing it home has been more immense than even catching it myself. Immense might even be an understatement, which is why I decided it would be best to take some days off from work back in March, due to the lack of information circulating at the time. 2 days after my decision, I got a call from my boss telling me I wouldn't be coming back to work for an indefinite amount of time. Not unlike countless others across the world, this news hit hard. But the ramifications on my mental health and my future have only grown since the beginning of the pandemic. I work in an industry that may never recover from the effects of COVID-19, which really sucks. Because not only did I love my job, it's where I became who I am today, which was why back in March, the possibility of never going back wasn't an option. I would just collect the government check to float by until things went back to normal, and I'd go right back to work like nothing ever happened. So instead of figuring out what to do next, I played Animal Crossing. A lot of Animal Crossing. I played Animal Crossing like it was my goddamn job for almost a whole month because it was the best means of coping I had. I wanted to catch every fish and bug, invite all my favorite villagers to be a part of my little neighborhood, and decorate my, at the time, beachside abode. It's on a cliff top now. However, what I really wanted were those damn paths. Without the paths, my island simply wasn't complete, and I worked day in and day out gathering resources to craft furniture and make money to buy more furniture, all to reach that pesky 3-star town rating so I could make the island feel cohesive. To nobody's surprise, I got there and proceeded to deck out my island with the town square, a road that connected everybody's houses, and cute little patios for each villager. With my goal completed, I was actually just kind of done. Not immediately, of course, but with boredom and burnout setting in, along with the lack of a new goal to chase, my interest began to wane. I still think Animal Crossing New Horizons is a pretty fantastic game, and it couldn't have come out at a better time, but clearly, my playstyle was a problem. It's the kind of game that's designed to be played in short bursts, checking out what's new while completing a few daily tasks or customization before shelving it until the next day. As a result of being stuck inside all day, every day, I didn't do that, playing relentlessly until I ran out of stuff to do before dropping it entirely. And each month that passed without playing made it more and more difficult to go back. Just as suddenly as it became a viral sensation, I moved on from Animal Crossing to have some new experiences and some that were a bit more familiar, like learning how to speedrun Super Mario 64 and grinding competitive Overwatch. But playing New Horizons left me with a hunger to play something similar, a comforting game that feels like a home away from home, where I can escape from our grim reality for a bit without getting frustrated or feel like I'm not making progress. A break from decision making, grinding, and mental taxation, something like Animal Crossing, but more tailored to my enthusiasm for progression, optimization, and goal seeking. Then I remembered, it's about time I returned to Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley is not unlike Animal Crossing in that both games seek to provide a more laid-back experience than the tried and true tradition of stop the bad guy and save the world, although one might argue that the villain of Stardew Valley is capitalism, and I wouldn't necessarily disagree with that. Funnily enough, my history with Stardew Valley is similar to the latest Animal Crossing entry. I was super excited for its release, played it until I got blistering headaches every day for the first week of its launch alongside some of my best friends, and then dropped it after seeing the insane amount of hours logged onto my Steam profile. Though unlike Animal Crossing, I think my problematic playstyle in its release window speaks more to its tremendous quality rather than the circumstances by which I played it. By creating Stardew Valley, Eric Barone, also known as ConcernedApe and the game's sole creator, sought to not only make a spiritual successor to his favorite childhood video game series, Harvest Moon, but to push the genre forward in a way modern titles have failed to do. I noticed this pretty quickly during my first playthrough, because from the onset, it provided me with a wide array of potential goals, some short-term and others long-term. The classic Harvest Moon games were pretty good at this, introducing the player to their new farm in a pitiful state shortly after the introduction, full of empty buildings and a vast field filled with nothing but weeds and debris. My first instinct was always to clear the field, in turn familiarizing myself with the controls and the layout of the farm. After that, I typically explore the town and neighboring environment, stumbled upon some foraging items to sell, and realized these don't make that much money, prompting me to buy some seeds to invest in. After I explored all these empty buildings, my first long-term goal was to fill them with livestock. But livestock is expensive, so I had to start with crops that take time and energy to grow. To maximize my profits, I planted many crops, which necessitates better tools to manage them, which require the raw materials and cash to create them. By the time I made enough crops to start filling my barn with livestock, I'd engaged with most of the game's mechanics, and as a result, new goals began to surface, like relationships, friendships, or even more upgrades. Along with the mastery of time management, this is what made the gameplay loop of Harvest Moon so satisfying. But over time, the series began to stagnate and became oversaturated with titles featuring minor twists on the formula, while the main gameplay loop remained largely unchanged. One of my biggest problems with that was side activities like mining, foraging, and fishing remained just that, minor side activities. Stardew Valley begins similarly, perhaps in homage to its inspiration, but unlike those games, it elevates these minor side activities to the forefront of the experience. Ape can even be quoted as early as 2012, stating,
"If I ever achieve my grand vision for the game, farming will be just one of several different professions you could choose, and each one would be complex enough to be a whole game in itself."
I don't know that every profession ended up as complex as what Barone had originally envisioned, but their addition to the gameplay loop is what allows Stardew Valley to stand out among the flood of mediocre Harvest Moon games released late into the 2000s. And it all starts with the introduction of its RPG leveling system. Where Harvest Moon's method of rewarding the player's effort was typically just more cash, in Stardew Valley, each of the 5 skills, farming, mining, foraging, fishing, and combat, can be leveled up by participating in various actions relevant to each skill around the farm and adjacent areas, like chopping trees, breaking rocks, or fighting enemies. In the beginning, the player character is pretty weak, and tasks that were much simpler in the Harvest Moon games, like clearing out the farm's debris, are incredibly more daunting. Level ups make the process much easier by increasing the proficiency of tools requiring less energy to use them, and after 5 level ups in each skill, Stardew Valley allows the player to specialize even further, rewarding them with a choice of perks that correlates with their playstyle. For instance, the fishing skill is increased by catching fish with a rod or by harvesting crab pots, each with their advantages and disadvantages. Fish caught with a rod tend to be more valuable than what you can gather from crab pots, and sometimes coupled with underwater treasure, but they take a lot of time and effort to catch, especially at lower levels. Crab pots, on the other hand, take no time at all. You can pretty much set it and forget it, turning a quick profit as long as you remember to bait them, but they're also a bit expensive to craft and have the chance of collecting trash instead of fish. After 5 level ups, you're given the choice of 2 professions. One that simply increases the value of all fish, and the other that reduces the amount of resources required to craft crab pots, encouraging specialization in one or the other. And at max level, you're given the choice of 2 more perks that correlates with that specialization even further. Implementing this progression path is how Ape reinvented the Harvest Moon formula, adding layers of complexity to each profession. Wherein even the best Harvest Moon titles, fishing often becomes an activity for when there is nothing better to do, in Stardew Valley, it can easily become one of the primary ways to engage with the game. Each profession in Stardew Valley is treated with this level of care and attention to detail absent from most Harvest Moon games, adding a layer of individuality to each playthrough. Instead of encouraging pure specialization like Barone may have envisioned towards the beginning of development, he created something much greater, a deep, interwoven system of progression that constantly crosses over each of the game's core mechanics. Like, I love mining. After countless hours spent spelunking through caves in Minecraft, or idly collecting ore in RuneScape as both a child and adult, it's one of my favorite things to do in games where it's featured, which is why it's one of the first things I choose to do after beginning a new playthrough of Stardew Valley. Mining is one of the most fleshed out aspects of the game and really does feel like it could be a game in itself, enriched even further by its interactions with the other professions. Combat is obviously a huge part of mining, and the resources resources you gather are a necessity for crafting structures and items that facilitate more efficient farming and foraging. And there's even specific levels of the mine that inhabit fish unique to these areas. In order to get the most out of the rest of the professions, you have to engage with mining, and it goes both ways. I recently acquired access to the Skull Cavern for the first time, an endless mine found in the desert filled with more valuable ore, items, and tougher enemies. My goal was to reach level 100 to complete a quest for one of the game's more mysterious characters. The kicker? The Skull Cavern doesn't save your progress when you leave, meaning every time you re-enter, you must begin again from the first floor. Reaching floor 100 proved to be harder than I initially thought, and through enlisting the knowledge of the community, I learned that in order to reach my goal, I'd have to get a bit creative, utilizing crafting recipes I largely neglected for most of my playthrough. Through crafting bombs and staircases from resources gathered in the standard mine to clear floors quicker, to stockpiling foraging items, fish, and crops to create food with buffs to movement speed, combat, and luck, I was engaging with all of Stardew Valley's mechanics to complete my goal. What makes this so special to me is that I went into Stardew Valley with an expectation to play Harvest Moon on my computer, with a certain playstyle in mind. Plant crops, water, harvest, purchase animals, milk, shear, maybe chop some trees and catch some fish on the side, rinse and repeat. What I was met with was a system much deeper than that. One that grew up with its audience rather than stay complacent. I think that is what keeps me coming back to Stardew Valley. It's not just a love letter to fans of Harvest Moon, but a maturation of its gameplay, themes, and characterization. Because the game is bursting with content, it can often be difficult to pull yourself away from the work to interact with the townsfolk, made even more difficult by the fact that the characters appear to be a bit surface level and one-dimensional at a glance. However, when you decide to peel back the curtain, it's revealed that the characters only give as much as the player is willing to put into the relationship. Many of them hide their vulnerabilities, revealing them in touching scenes that parallel real-world struggles. It's realistic, refusing to shy away from darker themes relatable to a wide audience of players struggling themselves.
To me, that includes going beyond the normal confines of what is expected from a video game character. People struggle with personal issues, and I wanted to portray that. I think it makes the characters a lot more relatable, not just these ideal abstractions of people that are sometimes found in games.
This rang true to me after I experienced a shocking amount of relatability with some of the more minor characters. Whether it be Clint's lack of confidence and his desire to find the courage to confess his love to Emily, or Linus's initial lack of trust and fear of judgment for living an unorthodox lifestyle. These characters come off very reserved and sometimes cold until you show them empathy, prompting their quirks and personalities to shine through. And to me, few are more moving than Shane. Shane is an asshole. From the very first moment I spoke to him, he made his temperament known, mask off with his rudeness, wanting nothing to do with me. He instantly reminded me of people in my life I would rather not be reminded of, and for that reason, I steered clear of him for quite a while. That was until maxing out my relationships with all of the townsfolk became my immediate goal. What I was about to learn about Shane was definitely unexpected at the time, but in hindsight, isn't all too surprising. Shane suffers from depression. What brought him to this point is unknown, but what is known is how he chooses to cope with it, his addiction to alcohol. Even before I tried to get to know Shane, putting the pieces together implied there was something going on with him. His schedule consists mostly of working his dead-end job at the Joja Mart, the most drab and depressing corner of the valley, before heading to the Stardrop Saloon, where he spends most of his free time getting drunk. This, coupled with his combative disposition and disheveled appearance, slowly gave me the idea that maybe he was projecting some insecurities. After reaching a certain level of friendship with him, entering the forest at night presents a scene where Shane begins to divulge his personal thoughts. You ever feel like no matter what you do, you're gonna fail? Like you're stuck in some miserable abyss, and you're so deep you can't even see the light of day? I just feel like no matter how hard I try, I'm not strong enough to climb out of that hole. As someone who struggled with depression in the past, this scene changed my outlook on Shane, and I had to see his character arc to the end. Every scene felt like a gut punch, watching him spiral further and further by accidentally hurting the people around him, escalating to a point some people don't return from. I found Shane nearly passed out next to the cliffside, surrounded by beer bottles, and in a heartbreaking moment, he revealed that he often visits these cliffsides, contemplating taking his own life. I don't know if I can accurately describe how this scene made me feel, but speaking candidly about suicide, this line, "But I'm too scared, too anxious, just like always," in regards to failing to find even the smallest amount of strength needed to take his own life, resonated with me in a way few other forms of media I've seen portraying the dangers of declining mental health have. This seemingly innocuous line of dialogue portrayed a personal struggle I felt alone in bearing during my darkest moments, and the following choice needed to be made by the player demonstrates the seemingly insurmountable task of safeguarding someone's life when you lack the training to do so. I don't want to make assumptions, but after experiencing this, I can't help but feel that ConcernedApe, Eric Barone, has dealt with his own struggles, or at least understands what it's like to have to fight the urge to give up. Shane's character arc demonstrates a profound understanding of mental health struggles with such brevity that many players might not even think twice about it, but to those struggling, it thankfully sets a great example. Through the player's support and a manifestation of his own strength, Shane begins walking down the road to recovery, not simply coming to terms with his depression, but thriving in the face of it, cultivating an everlasting friendship or relationship in the process. While Shane's arc is one of immense importance to me, it's merely one of plenty relationships in the game that demonstrate the value of connection and supporting one another. Ape makes this philosophy clear from the beginning of Stardew Valley. One look at its introduction says enough. There will come a day when you feel crushed by the burden of modern life, and your bright spirit will fade before a growing emptiness. When that happens, my boy, you'll be ready for this gift. If you're reading this, you must be in a dire need of a change. The same thing happened to me long ago. I'd lost sight of what mattered most in life, real connections with other people and nature. So I dropped everything and moved to the place I truly belong. I've enclosed the deed to that place, my pride and joy. It's located in Stardew Valley on the southern coast. It's the perfect place to start your new life. This was my most precious gift of all, and now it's yours. I know you'll honor the family home, my boy. Good luck. Love, Grandpa. Today, I find myself reading this passage with a lump in my throat and a desire to find my Stardew Valley. Thinking about where I was when I first read this back in 2017, when Stardew Valley launched, I was a completely different person, suffering from insecurity and a lack of self-worth, clutching to games as a means of escape. There were many times where the thought of giving up crossed my mind. Thankfully, I didn't, and proceeded down my path of mental recovery. 2020 was a new challenge. In a world stricken by the pandemic, living in a country more divided than ever, the future more uncertain than ever. In moments of respite, I find myself turning to Stardew Valley once again. At the beginning of the pandemic, I turned to Animal Crossing to waste time. When it became clear that this wasn't just going away, and that returning to my way of life that had been uprooted so suddenly wasn't an option, I returned to an old passion, creating content for YouTube and Twitch. That meant playing and covering games that mean something special to me. Stardew Valley is much more than a time waster. It's a game with no shortage of goals to chase. I feel like I learn something new about it every time I decide to play, even after 100 hours of playtime. It challenges me to reflect on my relationships, reminding me of the value of human connection. Stardew Valley is an escape, not to a fantasy or science fiction world, but to a world parallel to our own. And by engaging with its thoughtful progression loop, I can escape to its world for a moment without feeling like I'm wasting time. The turn of a new year is pretty exciting in Stardew Valley. I usually spend the winter season stockpiling resources, upgrading tools, and making adjustments to my farm layout. It's a great time to recharge and prepare for the challenges of the upcoming year. New crop rotations, collections to complete, and friendships to kindle. 2020 was especially hard on myself and my family, so I spent the holidays doing just that. recharging. Not thinking of work or my future, but making the most of this time we have together. In 2021, I know I will face new challenges, and I'm sure some will be even tougher than this past year, but I'm ready. And I know that when times get tough, I have a place to return to for a moment of respite. A game created by the determination and passion of one man. Just more proof that anything is possible when you put your mind to it. That game is Stardew Valley.